Well, welcome everyone. I'm Steve Savant. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Phoenix, Arizona on KXXT Family Values Radio. I also want to welcome our online audience on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I want to give a shout out to Beyond Fear to Freedom, one of the best Christ-centered fellowships that provide a safe and loving community for women to recover. And by the way, if you have nothing going on Friday nights, you should check them out on their site, beyondfeartofreedom.org. 5:30 to 6:15, somewhere around that vicinity, food and fellowship, and then their actual program. If you're thinking, if you hear this story today, and you say, I have a relationship, I can really relate to this gal, I think you should go and check it out. So I ask you to do that. Today we're having a person that I actually met. We met together in prison, shockingly. And Christina O'Brien has a blockbuster story, a story that nobody wants to live through. She doesn't. We all our past, my past, a lot of people know my story too. Nobody wants to live it. But since we already have, God sanctified our story and made it palatable for other unbelieving people to hear, even prodigals. I think about 20% of everybody I meet in jail and prison is some kind of former Christian or a Christian background or God-conscious background. There's a lot of what I call, especially on the women's yards, we call them prodigals. Yeah, prodigals. So, Christina, walk me through. Where are you raised? Where are you brought up?
I was brought up in Tucson, Arizona. Born in Mexico, but nobody told my mom not to be vacationing in Mexico when she was 8 months pregnant. So when I was 2 weeks old, I came to Tucson, grew up in Tucson, and experienced most of my early childhood and teenage trauma in the city of Tucson. Went to prison for the first time from Pima County Jail at the age of 18.
Now, before 18, though, the trouble started way before that.
Way before.
So give us a kind of a front end, because I'm asking you, don't you think it's true? Most people do not go out of their way to get into the trouble that you got into. I mean, most dreams of little girls, Barbie dolls, whatever, you're looking for normal domestic thinking here, a dream that most gals have.
Absolutely. I didn't wake up one day and decide that I wanted to be a heroin addict or a prostitute. That was nowhere in my radar. What I had read all the fairy tales, all the, stories about the Prince Charmings and all that of the world, and I had dreamed of a white picket fence, not a barbed wire one. But my childhood experience just put me on a collision course to where inevitably that's what my fairy tale turned into, darkness and madness. But it did start in early childhood. As I look back, I can, definitely see where the enemy started his attack on me and my innocence at a very, very young age. My two earliest memories in my formative years before the age of 5 were of being molested by two separate perpetrators.
Within the family or outside?
They were outside the home. And it just was because I wasn't being looked after, I wasn't being protected, basically. And so I was just left vulnerable. And that's how the enemy started his attack for my innocence and for my soul at a really early age.
Could you have said something to your parents about this?
I did.
And?
I actually did. At first, I was given some really uncomfortable messages about my identity and my worth, because when I did ask for help, the first time it just upset the household, caused a fight with the neighbors. My mom and my stepdad, argued about what I had said was done to me, but nobody really talked to me about what I had said was done to me. So, I received that message that I was going to ask for help and probably not get it. And then the second time that it happened and I did finally ask for help, I was blamed for the incident that happened, basically. Had I not behaved this way, or had I not been outside playing in shorts or whatever.
How old were you when all this happened?
About at the second time at the age of 8, 9.
Okay. All right, what child at 8 or 9 is thinking about being provocative to their male neighbors?
Pretty much
Zero.
No child.
Right. And by the way, I just want to say this is true. I've been in prison and jail for the last 16 years, not only holding meetings, but interviewing, doing one-on-one counseling, which we call tank orders. And nobody believes these gals. What is with that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, other than that, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I think that nowadays, maybe there's a lot more conversation about childhood sexual trauma, but in the 70s and 80s, it was just something that we didn't talk about. Nobody talked about it. You didn't talk about it within the home. You certainly didn't talk about it outside of the home, and it was, just a culture of secrecy, more so was my experience. Shame, definitely. So I was kind of cut deep with that root of shame at a very early age.
Now, most people would say, okay, this is a tough scene, but you said it's so bad at home, the environment, the atmosphere, there's no protection. You were out of there at 13.
I was out of there at 13 because it was just a lot of chaos within the home, and so I wasn't safe outside of the home, but I also wasn't safe within the home emotionally, and I was getting blamed for the arguments and the chaos that was going on within the home, and I thought, this is crazy. I was like at 10, 11, 12 years old, I remember looking in the catalogs at pots and pans and furniture and stuff like that, and just thinking to myself, I'm going to have my own place, and I'm going to do this my own way, and I can probably take care of myself better than anybody else anyway. And so I left home.
At 13?
At 13.
Okay, so no education.
No, I was good in school, but, I didn't have...
Did you get a job at 13? How do you get a job at 13?
No, not at 13.
Yeah. So what happened? You're out of the house. You think you're free, and I always love this. We leave home. We think we're free. Then we go out and see people that say they might like us. There's a lot of people out on the streets that will invite you to be part of their lives, but it's usually a user relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, so you leave at 13. Where'd you go?
I stayed at friends' houses.
Of your own age, if I don't mind asking?
My own age
Okay.
at first, yes. But I also gravitated towards an older crowd. Especially, once I had discovered drugs and alcohol, because drugs and alcohol kind of came into play right about that time too, at age 12, 13. And so I gravitated towards an older crowd, and that was where, I was able to get high and kind of hang out, and, they would accept me there. And so it was a comfortable environment for me for a time. And the problem with that was that, once again, I'm vulnerable. I'm a child thinking I'm grown up, acting like I'm grown up, but I don't have a grown up mind, and I certainly don't have a grown up heart. And unfortunately, I was again in the line of fire of people that had, predatory behavior, and I fell victim to that again. I was, drinking with a man that was much older than me. I was, 14 then at the time. I ended up losing my virginity at the age of 14 by a rape. He raped me.
And did you stay with him after that?
No.
Okay,
no.
so you're out of there.
Yeah. I didn't even know who he was. I was drinking, and so for many years I blamed myself for that incident. See, because now my purity's gone, right? I didn't even know what that exactly meant, but all I knew for sure is that, whatever was there is gone and can never be recovered. And I blamed myself for that, because I said, had I not been drinking, had I not maybe blacked out or whatever, then I wouldn't have ended up having sex with this man. Well, in actuality, he did rape me.
Just for a second, I just want to make sure, if you're here listening to this and you have children, prepubescent children heading into teenage years, you just got to have a big wake-up call. I mean, drinking and being into alcohol and 12, 13, 14 is a major platform for people to lose their innocence. And I just really beg you to just make sure you got a handle on your kids and you're watching what's going on. I'm a father of 6. I have 4 daughters. I mean, I just remember being on alert 24/7 back in the day. So when this happened, and this is a terrible thing for a young lady to experience, right? So you're out of that abusive relationship. Do you think you had, you gain street smarts when you're on the streets, but do you gain discernment? Here's the big question. You have street smarts, but are you discerning at that age?
I think you have to develop that now I understand it as discernment, but back then it was kind of like that other sense that I had that would kind of alert me to negative vibe or something off of a person and stuff. And so because I had to learn how to live my life that way, and unfortunately that's something that never leaves you. Once you develop that, you carry that with you for the rest of your life. You're always sizing people up. You're always trying to differentiate the good and the evil within a person, so fight or flight, right? But that was all what I developed in my teenage years because of my experience on the street and living that life.
And the dope you were doing at that time?
By the age of 16, it was crack, heroin, cocaine.
Already. So there's a short time of introduction into hard drugs.
Very short time of smoking weed and drinking, and then it elevated to harder things.
When we come back in segment 2, we're going to talk more about Christina's story. If you hear this story and say, boy, I relate to this is something that you may want to do. Go out to Beyond Fear to Freedom, hit their website and say, I need to talk to somebody. And I would do it. And if you're a young person, especially 14, 15 years old, and you're hearing this, I would jump on that site and get a hold of some of these people. You're listening to 180, the talk show that talks about the greatest conversion stories of all time. We'll be right back, right after this message. Okay, how you doing? You okay with the questions? Okay, just making sure you're golden.
Yeah. Am I doing okay?
Yes, you're doing great. I just want to make sure you're here.
The recovery can be difficult, but you don't have to travel it alone. Every Friday night, like-minded women gather together to share a meal and their stories, how they broke the destructive cycles in their lives by the power of God and moved on to a new life in Christ. For more information about Friday nights, just go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. If you can't get to BFF on Friday nights, or you don't live in the Phoenix area, you can stay connected by joining BFF's Subscribe Tribe, where you'll receive their weekly study guide, so you can track with them online. Just sign up today on BFF's website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. And don't forget to listen to BFF's weekly video podcast with Debbie G and Sheridan. Their own life experiences and their biblical influence will overhaul your thinking, your identity, and your future. They'll keep you encouraged with some great insights and biblical truth. Just friend them on Facebook or go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. BFF, where you might just discover the best friend forever.
Well, welcome back to our second segment with Christina O'Brien. I'm Steve Savant, your host of 180, people who make a 180-degree turnaround, a major league about face. I love to hear these stories. And if you say, Steve, I want to write you and talk about this, just write me at steve@180uturn.com. That's 180U, Y-O-U, turn. Not U-turn, you start to turn, right? So 180uturn.com. Steve at 180uturn.com. Christina, we're back again. And of course, you're even part of the commercial here for Beyond Fear to Freedom. You've been with them a little while. But I want to return because we're going to spend this week or this whole week about your story. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll be talking about your story. Then Thursday, we'll talk about your conversion, unbelievable. And then we'll talk about, hey, how is life on Friday? We're up to 16 years of age, right? Mm. Could you say in your heart, now you have not, when you fall short, how do women who are strung out on dope, especially when you're talking about heroin and crack, are you shooting?
Yes.
Okay. All right. How did you graduate from smoking marijuana, which is lightweight in most people's eyes, and then moving into heroin, not smoking it, but then moving right into shooting?
I think it goes with the territory that when you're living that life, the numbing agents lose their effectiveness, I think. After a while, smoking weed does its trick for a while, and then you're getting deeper and deeper into the darkness. And, ultimately you're surrounded by people that are doing all these different kind of drugs, particularly, if you are out doing prostitution and that type of thing. I mean, that's just what happens.
It's really strictly revenue based, right? You need the money to buy their drugs.
You need the money to buy the drugs, but you need the drugs also to sustain yourself out there in that lifestyle. What I've learned after coming out of that lifestyle is that that's the cycle that you get in, right? You're out there, you're addicted, you're out there, you're making money to support your habit, but you also have to have that habit in order to be out there making the money. And little by little, you don't even realize what you're doing to your soul.
It's a vicious circle, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, I have to say, when you think about it, I was looking at the Bible passages that use the word sorcery, and its Greek translation in the original is pharmakos, which is, they're putting pharmakos, which is our word for drugs in the U.S. and in English, using it for sorcery. I mean, do you think this is a huge entry into the dark side?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think that was the enemy's, double-edged sword for me, was to, first of all, get me to a place where I was just riddled with shame so early in childhood, and then I was not able to function outside of that shame, and I couldn't deal with being comfortable in my own skin. I was never comfortable in my own skin. So in comes the drugs, and then the drugs just opened up the doors to every manner of darkness you can imagine, because you're out there in the sex industry and in the world, and it's vicious, and every kind of sin and dark thing that you can imagine resides out there on those streets.
Okay, at this time you're 16. Are you still living in Tucson at this time?
Yes.
Okay, so when you're down south, you're into this huge lifestyle that's destroying you. Did you recognize it was destroying you at the time it was occurring?
I did not.
Before I get you, are we all that unconscious when we're going through these things?
I don't think. So for me, I kind of surrendered to it, if that makes sense. I had gotten that message that this is what it was going to be, that was all I was ever going to be. Like I realized really early in age that I was going to be nothing more than something to be used and tossed aside when men were done with me. And I decided that the way to get in front of that, or the enemy convinced me, was to convince myself that I was the one on top, right? I was the one coming out ahead, because no one was going to get anything for free, ultimately. And so that opened up the door to the prostitution, and ultimately falling into the hands of, pimps and so on and so forth, because if this is what I'm going to be, then I'm going to be very good at it, is what I told myself, and that was a lie. But yeah, we're very deceived out there in that life.
You just said something very critical. You are telling yourself this, right?
Yeah.
So the echo chamber inside our head, or our soul in this case, is really the thing that's running the show.
Absolutely.
But I noticed in part of your story that once you hang around with master manipulators like pimps and so forth, you become a master manipulator. Yeah, talk a little bit about how do you go from you're always the follower to the master manipulator.
Become a product of your environment, for sure, but ultimately you adapt to your surroundings, and to survive. It's a matter of survival. That's what we'll tell ourselves as our conscience is being severed. And our feelings, emotions, our ability to feel empathy is cauterized. So now, in the name of survival, I'm doing these things to hurt people. I'm stealing these things. I'm taking your money. I'm doing all this kind of stuff in the name of survival.
Things that in your heart are wrong.
Absolutely.
But somehow I have no feelings anymore.
I have no feelings. It's dead. My conscience is dead. I have no feelings of sorrow or remorse whatsoever for the things that I'm now doing to survive, and because I'm justifying my behavior and my actions towards other people, because I got a raw deal early in life. Nobody can deny that. That is,
So you're just going to pay it
so
forward.
I'm just gonna, every single. At first it started out to be, every single man, because of the way that I was hurt by men, and then it just kind of morphed into every single person that I come in contact with is going to pay, because, I got a raw deal for me.
While this is all going on, you're almost 18, and you're going to have experienced your first time in jail.
In jail.
What set that up?
Well, I had already been introduced to the criminal justice system as a teenager, and unfortunately the police were always very frustrated because they could not have me be accountable for my actions because I was a minor, you know, and they would always tell me, you know, when you turn 18, the game's over, right? And I'd be like, yeah, whatever, okay, you know, and I'd get out of juvie again. And then when I, you know, 2 months after I turned 18, I caught my first felony. And that was my first introduction to, you know, the real jail. But they were all women that I had already dealt with on the streets, you know, so I kind of had that. And I was, even at that age, you know, kind of really arrogant. And
Juvie, I've been to many places. Juvie Hall, in my view, is the toughest gig to have in prison. I'd rather do, you know, maximum security. I'd rather do death row. Juvie Hall is a tough road to hoe. And when you went there, how did you feel? You know, you're a kid. You're just in Juvie Hall. How much help is that?
well, and there is no help. And the thing is that one of the first times that I ever went through heroin withdrawals was in juvie. And they just, at that point in time, were not equipped to deal with a young girl that is going through severe heroin
No
withdrawals.
medication.
No
medication.
No, and I couldn't even really articulate to them what was wrong with me. I mean, by that time I had, you know, track marks all over my arms and stuff like that. So it was kind of, but they didn't see a lot of that coming through their jails at that point in time. So they didn't know what, and by the time maybe social workers or whatever would put 2 and 2 together, I'd find a way to get out. So I was just slipping through the cracks, basically.
That's remarkable, because in our present day, dope in juvie could be as bad as it is inside. Somebody's
Absolutely.
trafficking, somebody mules it in. I mean, and to think that wasn't a big deal back in the 70s because they weren't aware of it. Let's put it that way. It was a big deal. It's just not aware of it. That's occurring is unbelievable, because when you start heading into jail, when you get your first felony, right? Sometimes I've seen a lot of judges be a little softer on your first time in. They're trying to accommodate you. Maybe this will be your big scare and you'll not go back. Was that for you?
The judge gave me an opportunity to turn it around, as they do everybody. You know, when I landed in the adult court system, they tried, like they do everybody. Oh, this young girl, look at her, she's 18 years old, my goodness, you know. And I played that card to the hilt. Oh, my childhood, I had a terrible childhood. You just don't know what happened to me. And so for the crime that I committed, you know, they put me on probation, tried to get me rehab, tried to get me help. And I was too far over the edge at that point, so there was really no reeling me in. Even at the age of 18, I blew whatever chances they gave me, and within 6 months, I was on my way to prison. With you know, there was no turning back.
I'm a little taken back by the thought of the help that was offered. That you could use a phrase like "you're so far gone," anything of the conventional society's remedy to help people is pretty much not going to work.
Yeah, well, I didn't want help, because at that point in time, I had that mentality. I had a victim mentality, and I had learned to manipulate. That was my survival skill, was to be a master manipulator. So, you know, whatever I could do to convince everybody else that look what happened to me, and this is why I am the way I am, and just to push that as far as I could. But inevitably inside, I didn't want help. I wanted to get high. I wanted to stay high. I wanted to stay in a perpetual state of numbness, even at the age of 18.
When I think about all the people I've met in prison jails for the last 15 years, I notice that many people try to use sympathy to suck you into their orbit, and so that they never have a chance to break out of that and see if there are other alternatives. We're going to be talking about Christina's story tomorrow and Wednesday, and we're going to pick it up so that you can understand what she's been through, and maybe you could benefit from it. All this week we'll be talking about her story, so you won't want to miss a single episode. And don't forget to check out BFF Meeting on Friday night at 5:30 for food and fellowship, and 6:15 for some of the best sharing you'll ever experience. Hey, childcare is even provided. For more information, just go out to their website, beyondfeartofreedom.org. So until next time, I'm Steve Savant, and remember, no one's outside the reach of God. No, not one.